And we are live, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. Today is Friday, August the 7th, and this is the beginning of a new YouTube series on this channel called The Devil's Advocate. And today's topic is being a billionaire morally wrong? We'll be back in a few seconds. Welcome back. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, this is a new segment, and I'm going to be having several different segments, on the channel. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone who is listening live and who has made themselves known in the chat via YouTube and, of course, Facebook. And, of course, those of you who are listening in the archives. So, this new segment is called The Devil's Advocate. And as the title may suggest, more than likely it will be me, but on occasion we'll actually have some guest devil's advocates. So whatever the topic is and whatever everyone is saying in terms of their opinion, I will take the opposite, or I would just ask questions in opposition to see, how well-rounded we are, on a number of topics. So, these, my statements and views won't necessarily reflect, how I personally feel about anything or whatever it is that I say. I'm just here to be opposition. So that's my role as the host on this particular segment. So hopefully, saying everyone gets it, and want to shout out everyone who was in the YouTube chat. So peace to D Centavo, Sister Mika, Aman Minra, Suit Atum, Bakari Omakihinde, Torre, Sister Monica, who's actually on the panel, but she's in the chat too. So peace to Sister Monica. But Marquise Kid, Phi Light and Tist, SE44, Brother Chavez, Ja Mitzvah Nubia, Whereby Kush Yisrael, Stacy Burleson, Goddess Sekmet, and I think that I have everyone there. So if I'm missing anybody on the Facebook, please forgive me. I don't have it open on the other computer just yet. So, peace and love to everyone. And so I want to introduce all of the guests that we have. And so we have a dynamic panel. And so, first up, we have Sister Tamia McEwen, PhD, who holds a doctorate of philosophy in curriculum and instruction, Masters of Arts in Secondary Reading, and 200-hour certification in Vinyasa Yoga, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and Level 1 Qigong, and is the CEO and founder of Well Friends LLC, virtual wellness concierge that offers wellness support through yoga, nutrition, guidance, breath work, and meditation. We also have Sister Monica Lamb from Opelousas, Louisiana. She is a retired Army veteran. She manages the nonprofit organization Tri-City Visionaries, which assists with community development. In addition, she owns Lamb Professional Solutions, LLC, a company that supports business owners with federal business certifications. So a lot of y'all may need to holler at her. And last up, we have our good brother, Master C, Brother Sheikh Ahmadiot, who is a lay historian, geopolitical analyst, and reggae recording artist, currently residing in Washington, D.C. metro area, Beltsville, Maryland. He has released 3 studio albums, the most recent being Stand My Ground. Currently 2 years into a literature review regarding the historical origins of capitalism. His focus is on the period 1066 to 1550 CE that laid the foundation for the political system called capitalism in England, where it originated about 500 years ago. The end goal of the literature review is to assemble and publish a synthesis of his research, tentatively entitled The Most Prevalent and Dangerous Myths About Capitalism. So this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion. So I welcome Dr. Tamia, Sister Monica, and Brother Master C. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
I'm good. I'm good. So good to see everyone.
All is well.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining me on my first segment of the Devil's Advocate. So, you know, a lot of y'all know I like to argue. So I guess this is a more productive way of doing it without it being, you know, debates or whatnot. So, you know, in debate teams, they make you switch sides of an argument just to see that you can be, you know, well-rounded in understanding an issue. So that's kind of the role, you know, here. So we'll have a good time, and I can't wait to hear your perspectives. So what inspired this particular topic? Hold on, I'm receiving feedback from somebody's.
It might be.
So if any of y'all have a second device on, you may need to turn the second device, you know, off. So I don't hear it now. So cool. So the inspiration from this actually comes from Dr. McEwen, who on her Facebook page shared a series of memes. And so I have the memes, and I presented them to the panel, so they've had an opportunity to see it prior to, and I'm gonna share it with the audience, and hopefully, you know, everyone could read it. And I don't know if this actually uploaded this in order. It doesn't look like it has, but you know, we'll do our best in remembering what order it was in. And so I don't know who created the meme, but the meme makes the statements that billionaires shouldn't exist, and starts off the argument with human brains have not evolved to understand large numbers. As a result, we tend to vastly underestimate how large 1 billion is. This may help. So 1 million seconds equals 11 days. That's good. Did I say that correctly? 1 million seconds equals 11 days. 1 billion seconds equals 32 years. So if you can, you know, by analogy, kind of get how great a billion is, you know, at least in time, that should let you know if your base reference is the second. So let me see. No, that's not it. Nope, that's not it either. We'll get to these. Nope. It's a lot of them, so I forgot which one comes second. Do you remember, Sister McEwen, which was the second one?
So
I think that's it.
Feedback was coming from me, so I'll come in and out.
I see. So it says billionaires don't earn their wealth. There are 2 ways to become a billionaire. Inherit it. So 44% of all billionaires inherit their wealth, at least in the current times. And then the second way to get a billion is through cold-blooded, merciless exploitation of the working class. If you make $106K, for example, a year, which is triple the U.S. median income, it would take you 6,410 years to earn $1 billion. If you make the federal minimum wage, it'll take you almost 70,000 years to make $1 billion. A billion is not working 70,000 times harder than a janitor. Labor creates wealth. So I'll stop there, and then we can address some other memes later. So I'm gonna start with Dr. McEwen, then Sister Monica, and then Brother Master C. What is your opinions on what we've read thus far? What's your position on those statements?
Okay, so I'll definitely start by saying the purpose of posting it, of course, was not to be definitely is not peer reviewed, right? The purpose of it was really just to kind of look at the idea that given the state that society is in, if it was possible for individuals who had amassed a certain amount of wealth to be able to address the issues of inequity that exist, and them addressing that in a way that does not take away from their wealth and their well-being, then why not? If one individual or a few individuals could get together and actually use their capital, use their wealth to be able to alleviate many of the issues that the least of us are working so very hard to do, then why not? Thinking about the fact that individuals who typically have the least are carrying the burden or the responsibility of philanthropy. So, I didn't ask the question if it was morally wrong. That's your question. My pose had nothing to do with morality per se, but more with awareness. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm gonna go on mute.
But
Go ahead.
you were gonna come in? Go ahead. You make a comment? Okay.
No, I was just saying, I was telling you to go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so this out of all the flyers that you had, this one right here hit home, because I know that most of these individuals get their funding from contractual services, and the contractual services with the feds and with the government, and when you get into those type of services, once you get to a certain dollar threshold, you're supposed to go from small to being large, then to not being able to compete in that sector at all. However, it still gets put into their hands. The contract still somehow gets put into their hands. And I think that I don't think it's morally wrong, because I think if you put the business together and you make the money, you're entitled. However, I have a huge issue with the rules, the laws that we have in place, that the private sector is not fiscally responsible for, fiscally responsible for society. And that's where I fall off. I did an example where in the federal wages versus private wages, if you take a simple, like those who don't know, I'm heavily into government contracts. We have 6 of them. And so I use ours, for example. So we'll pay a driver to take someone from medical appointment to home. We'll pay that driver close to $21. In the private sector, who is not on a federal contract, they'll pay that driver $7.25 or possibly $10 an hour. if you do the math over a year's time frame, we're paying a driver almost $35,000 a year, whereas the other person paying them less than 16. And so we're eventually, the owners of the company are going to get, they're in millionaire status right now. They're going to get there. But I think we pay fair wages to those who work for us. I think there are other billionaires out there who constantly, now we also have a cap when we can get these contracts or not. So we have a mandate on how much we can go, you know, and how often we can participate in that service. I think that it's unfair. It's unfair on who those billionaires are and how they got that opportunity. That's why I think it's unfair. I wouldn't take the moral. I wouldn't let them be. I wouldn't take it from them though. But I do think they have a moral responsibility to take care of the community in which that company is housed.
Brother C.
Oh, okay. Can y'all hear me? It's such a pleasure to be here with you all. I just want to say that first of all. And I really appreciate being invited to participate in this. Because the topic really, you know, is really in an area that I'm really spending a lot of time in right now, as he's kind of, as you heard from bio, from a scholastic, well, I shouldn't say scholastic, but from a research standpoint. And the aim, as he said, is to end up with a book when I get through. So I'm kind of in the process of learning myself, you know. So I've been at it in a systematic way for about 2 years. So I expect to be at it for at least another 2. But anyway, as far as to get to the, I actually really like the title of the slide because I think it's really provocative. And obviously from the name of the show, that was the intent. So, but I do like the title a lot, and because there's a lot of angles that one can take to address it. So let's address one of my favorites. Let me address one of my favorites. One of the biggest myths about capitalism is that it is synonymous with business and trade. In other words, when one becomes a business person, that automatically makes one a capitalist. I think this is the prevailing mythology, or you can say the dominant narrative around this whole subject. And I think most people share that view. So when people talk about being anti-capitalist, most people automatically think that you're talking about being anti-business and anti-trade, which is false. That's not what it is. And so with the title, when you say are billionaires, what is it again?
Is being a billionaire morally wrong?
Right. Is being a billionaire morally wrong? Okay. Because that kind of gets into, y'all ever heard this expression amongst some of our people who say, all money is not good money? Y'all heard that? Okay. That kind of gets into the next aspect of this. Because when we look at it from an historical standpoint, right? When we look at what capitalist people, actual people, human beings, have done, then we can only say that it was immoral, in fact. We can just I'll just point to one example, and then, so I might want to step back in, but for example, in the 17th century, I can't remember the exact date, but in the 17th century, in England, the lords of capital and the government, which was one and the same, by the way. That's another thing. We'll get to that later. Decided to form a company. And the name of it was the Africa Company. And the whole purpose of forming this company was to exploit the west coast of Africa. That was the whole purpose of it. That's why it was put together. And included in the charter was that We getting ready to handcuff and manacle some niggas and carry them overseas and put them to work. That's in the chart. That was in the charter of the company. You see what I'm saying? So, and this, of course, we know this was a big part of the foundation of the wealth, because as Asar pointed out, 44% or whatever of the billionaires inherited their wealth. So we know that this wealth got passed down generation to generation. So we're talking about heirs, not only to the wealth, but to the values, you know, to the political position and power and influence and all of that. So I really think that when we talk about capitalism, we can't escape that characterization. And this is important. We can't, we're not going to get off the hook that easy. I'll leave it at that.
All right. I appreciate all three of your inputs. And so I decided to word it the way I did in terms of the title, because underlying that initial statement is really, that's what they're saying. You know, and I'm not saying that you, Dr. McEwen, you know, we're saying that. That's the underlying theme that I got, you know what I'm saying, from reading it. Because you're saying if they shouldn't exist, that means it's wrong for them to exist. Like their existence, there's something wrong with there should be no such thing as a billionaire. And so you always, or at least I hear a lot, you know, when people are making arguments against, you know, billionaires. And so the question I ask is, well, if a billionaire is wrong, well, what about millionaires? Are millionaires wrong too? And if millionaires are wrong, then I guess we should all be thousandaires. And then how many thousands must you have before it's wrong? Like, what is the morally, like, where should we all be in terms of money? Like, what is the cap that it would be, you know, right for anyone to have? And then who decides that? And any one of y'all can respond.
So I'll jump in here. So, of course, I'm definitely not going to say, you know, how much money anyone should have and what the cap should be. But in response to the post, and I remember the slide was talking about hoarding and was talking about how there's really no way to be able to really like spend all of that. It talked about how many lifetimes it, you know, could possibly take to be able to spend. It was a certain amount of, you know, $1 billion. And then it talked about the lack, like across the globally, it talked about the lack of healthcare, the lack of basic essentials, basic living essentials day to day. Like I think this is the one talking about, you know, homelessness, starving, dying of curable diseases. And this one right here, where it says $1 billion is such an incomprehensibly large sum of money that it'd be difficult to actually spend. That's what we mean by hoarding wealth. And so that's the angle that I look at. So if there's any part of morality that we want to talk about, let's talk about that particular part of being able to use the wealth that has been amassed to address some very real concerns. I'm not talking about giving somebody a yacht. I'm talking about some very real concerns that are going on across the world.
I think that where their businesses are located, if it doesn't reflect the net profit that they bring in or what makes them a millionaire, then that should definitely be addressed. So for example, let's take Amazon for example, right? So it's housed in low and moderate income areas. It gets these huge tax breaks, right? However, the area in which most of those facilities are housed doesn't reflect those billions that they actually make. So I think they should have a responsibility to pour some of that money back, as you stated in reference to the hoarding, to pour back into the environment of which your facility is housed and where it's actually getting its profits from for you to become a billionaire. That's my response on that.
You have something to say, Brother C?
I'm trying to figure out how to respond to that because hoarding. You know, I'm typical to hearing about inequality, you know, and I know a little bit about that. But hoarding, that's interesting. I hadn't really seen that or thought about it quite in that way. But of course, that's what's happening, of course. But I guess for me, it's a matter of the inequality that takes center stage. You know what I mean? And this kind of sort of is just another aspect of that, I guess, in a sense, is the inequality, and that's built into the system. You know, as the sister was explaining from her perspective, you know, I mean, and from whatever perspective we engage the system from, we're going to see that. You know what I'm saying? It's the system itself. It has a structure and a logic to it. You know, I mean, we've been there long enough to understand it, but it's amazing how certain aspects of it we don't seem to quite get. You know what I'm saying? And I guess we can go into a little more of that later. But as far as hoarding, yeah, that's real. And then when you look at how that affects, you know, the people at large, I mean, we have large segments of the population who are being described as an underclass, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, you can see various places in the United States today that look like they're just devastated. You know, I mean, you can see photos and pictures of some of these areas in certain different places in the United States right now. You take some time to look at it. So, you know, these are, what's the guy's name? I don't know, I think it was Michael Hudson or somebody called them sacrifice zones. That, you know, there's certain areas that, you know, because they're draining so much wealth, you know, from the people so fast. They, you know, they say, okay, they kind of concentrated in certain areas. So, it's, you know, it doesn't look quite so widespread. You know what I mean? And you go into certain areas and it's like, my God, where am I? You know what I'm saying? So it's, to me, that, and I can only describe that as immoral because we're talking about people's lives. You know, I mean, if you're born into that kind of a situation, you're born into that. You know, if you're born into that, what is your responsibility? Where is your response? How much of that responsibility is with you when you're born into that type of a situation? You know what I'm saying? Where you don't have access to, you know, the things that to make your life better. It's just not there. You know what I'm saying? So I can only call that situation immoral.
I wonder what role like religion plays in the idea that being wealthy is wrong. And so, you know, we know of several scriptures, biblical scriptures, for example, that, you know, like the famous one where, you know, it's easier for a camel, a camel to go through the needle, the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, and I know some, even on the African side, like when you read Dr. Fukiao's work on the Congo, they have a whole bunch of proverbs against, wealth. And so the assumption in Congo tradition is that if you have wealth, you could have only gotten it as a result of exploiting the community. And so I wonder, like, if like, let's say there's a scenario here. So I write a song, right? And so Master C's a musician, and he got, this hot reggae song, right? It blows up. He wrote it. He paid everyone, in terms of his band, adequately. Everyone was satisfied. And then it hit the radio and YouTube. And so I think we have about 7 billion people on Earth. 2 billion. It was on sale for $1. So it was on sale on Spotify or whatever for $1. And 2 billion people bought Master C's, hot reggae record. He is now instantly a billionaire. He got $2 billion. Is it wrong for him to have, like, if somebody like, challenged him for having that 2 billion, and you can't say that it's due to exploitation, and so here's the second part to this. So now that Brother C has the hot reggae, with the Sean Paul remix, saying out there, and he got $2 billion that he sold it for $1 each. Now, is he obligated to give $1 billion away to the needy or whatnot? Like, is he obligated to do that? And if he doesn't, he wants to keep it for himself and his family, because we always talk about generational wealth. If he wants to keep this for his family and his grandchildren and great grandchildren, saying for years to come, is he wrong? Anyone can take that.
Y'all remember Amos Wilson telling that famous thing about the Bible? Y'all remember that? I know Asar remembers it. You remember that, Asar? When he talked about when the rich man went up to Jesus and asked him what, he was ready to give himself to Jesus, and what can I do, to enter the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus told him, give away all your wealth to the poor, And the rich man hung his head and walked away. Amos famously said, did he give the wealth away? No, he didn't. So in answer to that, no, I'm not giving up nothing. No. No, but to get to the point that you're making a good point though. Marcus Garvey kind of dealt with that a little bit. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but he talked a little bit about that because he was getting a lot of heat from the socialists and the communists. And when I say heat, because what they were saying were attracting a lot of people's attention, and they were comparing what they were saying to what Garvey was saying. And it was interesting. So he was feeling the heat. It was competition, for people's attention, especially. It was real fierce, so that's another story. But he was feeling a lot of heat from them. So I think he began to think about ways he could try to, increase his competitiveness in a sense. So he started talking about things like this, about, how much wealth should people be allowed to have and things like that. And I think he actually came up with a figure, I believe, but I can't remember what it is. I can't remember what it was. It's been so long since I've seen it. But I think he actually came up with a hard figure, and this was like in the 20s. So, I guess we have to commend him for that, I guess. But to get to your question though, here's the thing. The problem is, in a capitalist society, is that everything is so insecure. Your housing is insecure. You know what I'm saying? Your income is insecure. And because your income is insecure, that means that your housing is insecure, your food is insecure, your gas is, everything is insecure. And that is one of the central features of capitalism. That's one of the central features of it, is that we are dependent upon the market for our livelihood. You see what I'm saying? So in that you see what I'm getting at with this. So that's the problem. The problem is in this society, we got people who don't have those things. And then if we're talking about people like, what's his name? Bezos. Jeff Bezos, who hadn't paid taxes yet. We still wait for him to pay taxes. I don't know if he probably never will, because capitalists don't pay taxes. I can tell you that right now. Only we pay taxes. But Jeff Bezos said, no, I'm mixing. Jeff Bezos. He said, hey, somebody asked him, with all this money, all this wealth you have, and all this, what are you going to do with all that wealth? He said, I don't know. Maybe I think I'll develop a space program. That's about the only thing I can think of, I can do with it. You know what I'm saying? So hey, they're trying to get out of here, bro. I'm just saying.
The System O. He got the hot reggae remix. With Sean Paul, Capleton on it, and there's a Puff Daddy remix. And he gets an extra billion, it was another billion folks who just got on the Master C, train or whatnot. It is again, is he wrong because he produced something that the world obviously needed and enjoyed, and they consciously gave up $1 of their hard-earned money to listen and have on their iPods this song. And because he doesn't want to give $1 billion to the poor, does that make him wrong?
No, I don't. No. I don't think it's wrong. No, I don't think it's wrong. And I think that in reference to that, that example and bringing in the whole tax piece is that a lot of one of my buddies, Mr. Ivy Stokes, says we have to start seeing our money in more places than just in our pocket. And the reason that a lot of those billionaires, millionaires, and all those different heirs have a lot of money because they hide their money into these assets because it's not taxable when they put it there. However, when we give it out charitable, because I know one of those slides talked about, them having so much, but only giving off a fraction of dollars to charity. I think that I still stand on if you're making your money off of a community. So in the music situation, it's unique. Now, Master P, which is one of my favorite artists, made his money from that music side, selling out the back of his cars and CDs and things of that nature, right? But he also comes back in the community and he helps the community. And so it's like a catch-22 for me, because I'm not saying you give the money back, but however, I think that if you're making your money from a particular location, that you have a fiscal responsibility to help and support, or maybe you hire some people and you pay them fairly. I'm riding on the side of fair wages because I'm involved with it. Matter of fact, I'm going through a DOL audit right now. It drives me because the rules and the laws that's in place for them to be responsible, it's not on our side.
Right.
They allow the private sector to pay minimum wage, whether it's $7.25 or $10. I'm sorry. Because how can you have a federal side where the wages are like this? but they create the laws. And so when it comes down to making the money, regardless of how you made it, from the $1 CD sale or the real estate in my community, either one or two things going to happen with your millions. You can't do your administrative work, produce your own track, package it, market it. I would just expect that you actually hire someone at a fair wage that they can live in an environment that's conducive for them. Not that, okay, I just made $1 million on this track. I know I have my producer, I have my beat maker, I have my marketing person, all of them. And I say, here you go, $100 for you, 2 for you, 5 for you. I think that's just totally unfair. I think, brother, sorry, I'm big on budgeting. When I give my classes, that's what I talk about, how to pay people fairly. So I'm big on the fact that, cool, make your million, make your billion. But your staff that you're paying, come on now. You got to be fair. And if you're fair to them, they'll paint their houses, they'll cut their grass, they'll build some more things in their community. If you're not, they're going to have to live under the table. They're going to have to cheat. They're going to have to not, and then we're going to be right where we started. So yeah, go on and make your million and then let me manage the money.
Dr. McEwen, she Sister Mo, introduced Master P into the mix. So we know that Master P, built his several $1 million empire, in music. But that music, it ain't like Master C. Master C's all conscious and he uplifts people and everybody feels happy and inspired and spiritual, because he's in that deep roots reggae, But Master P was talking about, selling drugs, the gang stuff.
Ice cream man.
He was talking about it. He just started, I don't know how many fights in the club with some of the songs, from back in the day, like everybody was rowdy, it wasn't that same, Master C energy. So if Master P,
I'm not mad at you, Master P. I'm not mad at you. If you see this, I'm not mad at you.
Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So if Master P,
call me Master P,
gets to billionaire status and is built off of, the whether he did this in real life or not, in terms of the selling drugs and the exploitation, saying of black people and the detriment, calling women bitches and hoes and all this other kind of advocating for fights and murder and all of this other kind of stuff. If he gets to $1 billion, is it morally wrong for him to be a billionaire, even if he does help his community, he hires people, pays them a fair wage, and things of that nature? How would you answer that question, Dr. McEwen?
Absolutely not. And I never agreed that it was morally wrong to be a billionaire in the first place. But I do agree with Sister Moa saying that there is a moral responsibility to, number one, definitely pay individuals a living wage to be able to take care of their basic necessities. Okay. And secondly, to have some level of philanthropy that you are not exploiting the individuals from whom you're getting this money from, the areas that you're amassing your wealth in. So of course not, it's not morally wrong. I'm not one to say, and I don't think any one person is to say, what someone should or shouldn't do in regards to that kind of fine line with, judging something based on, saying that's morally wrong because it's talking about this or it's talking about that. We have movies that are made all the time. Everybody has an imagination. So I'm not one to start, sanctioning people on what they can and can't do in regards to that. Pay people a fair and living wage, participate in philanthropy that's not taken away from you, but that's still being able to benefit these communities where you are getting that wealth amassed. And that's my point, and I'm sticking to it.
You on mute, brother? Sorry.
My bad. So let's up this a notch. We know that slavery in the United States is the foundation of its capitalist system, right? And they've made several trillions of dollars, over a 200 to 300 year period without paying those Africans who were enslaved any wages whatsoever, And so, of course, as Master C said earlier, and we noted earlier that a lot of these billionaires, they inherited the wealth. And so that wealth, we can argue, derives ultimately from slavery. So, but, we always hear this argument that in 2020, that, that wasn't us. We're talking about white folks and stuff. And although it was wrong, I had nothing to do with that.
Right.
And so if we just give Black folks jobs and pay them fairly, would that make it right? Just like in the sense of what Master P, because it was based off of exploitation, but he was able to do some good with it later once he accumulated it.
Hey, it's all about that bag.
So with the United States, the United States is a person. If we consider it a corporation, the United States is a person. It has, accumulated a number of wealth. What are the obligations? Do they have any obligations, to African people, the descendants of African enslaved persons, of today? And I'll start with you, Mo, Sister McEwen, and Brother C.
Yes, they have the same obligation that they gave to any other group that they've compensated. Is what drives me when we're approaching these conversations with Congress or whomever that has to make that decision is that the substance behind why. So here's what I think happened with us. They put together, and you'll hear me to my sister and my brother, you hear me speak a lot about contracting and grants because I'm in it. And I was an auditor, so I got to see the federal state side, and I'm in it from the private side. So here's what I think happened with us. They put programs in place for us to kind of camouflage the fact of giving out the reparations. However, the programs that they put in place, they make very difficult for us to obtain. So what I mean by that, for example, I'll start at high school level. So there's a program. So we say, well, our kids are unfairly educated. Our schools are horrible. Our teachers are underpaid. So they say, okay, so we'll help you out. We throw in the WIOA program. It has an opportunity for that student to get a job while in school. They have an opportunity to pay for at least 2 years of college for that student up to age 24 years old. We have an opportunity. So that particular program is supposed to meet the need of the African American community to help them based on the fact that they were fairly mistreated and having a hand up in being compensated fairly. So because my kid get the handout and they get just walk through, okay, I'm going to give you 2 years to give you a handout. Well, most of the kids don't know about it, right? Or if they do have it available, their parents don't have the transportation. So in the areas where there is governmental transportation that actually is supposed to go, the people who are hurting us in our rural communities, that transportation doesn't go. And when it does go, it takes them 2 hours to get to and from. So the programs that they camouflage reparations under, in my opinion, that they put in place, we can't access or get to. So what do they do with the money? Because they shifted into those pots of money. They change it and then, okay, well, you're not using the WIA. I'm going to put it in. Y'all say they're not eating. We're in a pandemic. Kids are not eating. Most of the kids are on reduced and free lunch in school. Is now staying at home. They're not getting access to food. I'm going to put it in the feeding program. Oh, but by the way, in order to get to that program, you have to have a 501c3. And then in order to have the 501c3, to become a sponsor, you have to have money. If you don't have money in the bank and you can't produce me 6 bank statements, then you're not qualified. So here comes the other ethnicity back in your community, benefiting from the program just to give you a meal that you still can't come up under. So in my opinion, I could go on and on about how I think in their mind, they helped us in form of reparations through programmatic programs from business governmental contracts all the way down to facilitating. That's why I'm very upset about the fact that we will try to go after loans from SBA versus grants. They just gave Johnson & Johnson $1 billion to produce vaccines. So we don't have no scientists. We don't have no companies that is just as good in biotech to produce that you can give that $1 billion to, or that 1.6 that you gave to Kodak. They've been bankrupt since 2011. I think they camouflage our opportunities of what reparations would have been in programs that they wean us out, and it makes it very difficult for us to get to. However, we can get to it, but our gatekeepers, the individuals we have in place to help allow us to get in, they don't open the door. And that's why I share what I share, because I think they're camouflaging our money in those programs for our demographics, but they allow other people to come in, the same people who are winning, the same people who got the $1 billion aired down to them, right? To come in and facilitate something that was rightfully ours that they gave to us under the programmatic umbrella, and we still can't get access to it. Oh, I could go on and on about that one. But go ahead, pass the torch.
That's because Black people are lazy. That's why you don't get the money. That's what it is. Dr. McEwen.
It's so many angles. It's so much to say and so where to go. We'll keep talking until it comes back. So, are you with? Okay, there you are. Okay, so the first point that came in my mind was the fact that if we trace the history of racism and oppression and enslavement, of course, within this nation, we have to also look at all of the laws and the power that went behind enforcing this system of oppression. Each time there was advancement. It's like, oh, okay, now you're free. With absolutely nothing, with absolutely no, nothing. When I graduated from college, I had no money, nothing. I didn't have an inheritance. I had zero money. Okay, so we look at us in this nation, right? You're living here, okay, you're free. You have absolutely nothing. Fine. Whatever needed to be done, did that, got your businesses, got your people, amassed your wealth, things of that nature, right? For each gain, for each amount of wealth that was amassed, a whole system of laws enforcing the oppression, enforcing that system of white supremacy, right? So for each hurdle, new laws, Jim Crow laws, sharecropping, all these things coming in. And that's when the amnesia sets in this nation. The amnesia of how vehemently the nation of the United States of America has continued to tighten those reins in each hurdle. We do what we need to do as a community and band together and still achieve and still make it and still progress. And there are still many wounds that we, suffer, we heal from over and over again. And so let me bring this to a point so we can move on. That's the thing that kind of sits in my mind. So I say, keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. With that same force of oppression, let's keep that same energy with that same force of equity. That's my point, and I'm sticking to it.
So, that's going to be the tag for the night. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So this was the point about slavery and economic wealth in the United States and that, right? And did they owe and that type of thing. It's kind of sounds like the reparations debate a little bit, which is an interesting debate. I want to just comment on from another angle but before I get to that, one thing we got to talk about is taxes. When you talk about me with my $1 billion, I should be taxed. I should be heavily taxed, and I would certainly understand that. I see too many people using a particular angle for their argument for reparations, which they don't need to use anyway because it's so obvious anyway that it's justified. But which makes it interesting because it's this argument that it will, or that it might close the economic gap between Africans and Europeans in America, which is absurd. There's no way any amount of money paid. And the reason that's absurd is because it doesn't change the system. I'll give you another example of that. When an African gets murdered in the United States, unjustified, like we see constantly, right? So when that happens, and we go through what we go through and all of that, and they do their thing, a lot of times when it comes down to the end, when in the final analysis, they end up paying this money, right, to the victim's family, right? A lot of times it's millions of dollars sometimes, right? If it's a particularly heinous case. So, and as a matter of fact, if you look into it, around the country, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year paying off lawsuits against the police. Every year. It's built into the budget. In fact, now I think they got some kind of bonds they selling now, I think. Seriously. So you see the point I'm making, right? So they don't paying money. They don't care about paying money. It means nothing to them. We can get reparations all day and all night long. And it ain't gonna change a thing if this system structure does not change. That's the point I'm trying to make. That's capitalism. That's the essence of it. And one aspect I got to hit before we get off is the so-called racial aspect of this, because It's so interesting when you look around, not just in the United States, but when you look around the world globally at who the capitalists are, which is real easy to do. I mean, Forbes does it every year. You know, all of the major capitalist mouthpieces do it every year. You know, they look at, it's important to them to know who, you know, so so if you look around the world, you will see that over 50% of all the world's capitalists are Europeans or of European ascent. Now, by that, I mean, you know, you look at Canada, right? America, which is mostly European still, although that's changing real fast. Certainly, they still control the politics and economics. When you look in Central and South America, same thing, right? When you look in Venezuela and all the rest of these places, capitalist societies, same structure, same economic, political structure. You see what I'm saying? So reparations, I'm not saying it's not justified. It's justified, absolutely justified, and it should be paid. But reparations is not going to change our situation vis-a-vis Europeans in America. It ain't. I'm sorry. It ain't going to be that easy.
Well, one could argue we would use that money to help build our own nation somewhere else. and that's how we deal with that.
Right.
So now a common theme is interwoven into this conversation, and that's on, you know, equality, so to speak. The question now is it realistic to have the expectation that equality can exist in any society, especially when you're talking about a population that has millions of people concentrated in one area? Are we just being, you know, for a lack of a better term, romantic with this concept of equality? Does that really exist? Is it even possible to exist? Should someone that, you know, has a strong, hard work ethic at the job and produces more output than somebody else, you know, over, let's say, a course of 5, should that person get paid the same as somebody who doesn't put in as much work, isn't as innovative or whatnot, and doesn't contribute and bring in the dollars, you know, saying, to a community? Do they deserve, regardless, because they're, you know, in similar or the same positions, deserve the same pay? You know, how does age and longevity factor into this? So somebody who's been doing this for a while, whatever this is, you know, and has accumulated experience and things over the years, and somebody who just came into the fold, should the person who just came into the fold be paid exactly like the person who's been doing it 20 years, etc.? Is this expectation of, you know, equality realistic? So I'm gonna start with Dr. McEwen, then we're going to go to Master C, and then we're going to go to Sister Mo.
Yes, I'll say yes. I mean, if we can dream of building our own nation, then, you know, somewhere else, and I'm gonna go full speed into this utopia, you know, this realistic utopia, and say yes. You know, we're sitting in on the cusp of building new realities and not maintaining the status quo. So we can have whatever nation we build. We can have whatever nation we dream of. We can have whatever reality we create. And I'm talking equity. I'm not talking equality. I'm talking equity. I'm talking living wage to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of as an individual. If I have a company, then perhaps my pay structure is not across the board based on this person gets 50,000 and this person gets 60,000. Perhaps my pay structure is based on, first of all, what is our budget as a company? Who do we have, and what are the needs of the individuals who are working here? How can everybody get a living, make a living wage who is a part of this particular company or a part of this particular unit? So if, you know, we're free to dream of whatever system, whatever society we have, then let's look at and dream up a system and a society that works for everybody and not just for some.
Well, I really
That's
like
my point, and I'm sticking with it.
I really like that make a new society part of what you said. I think that's real important, actually.
Wakanda.
Did you hear T.I. call Atlanta Wakanda? Did you see that? That's another story. All right. We ain't gonna get into that one. All right. Equality. You know, the equality that is most important, which nobody talks about, is political equality. Okay? Because I'm gonna tell you, politics rules everything. I'm telling you. And when I say politics, I'm not talking about electoral politics now. I'm talking about what the sister was talking about. That's politics. What she's been describing on the job that she's seen. Politics is concerned with the ownership, the management, the distribution, you see what I'm saying, of resources in a society. That's what politics is all about. That's what these political parties do, the Republicans and the Democrats and all the rest of them. And just what she was saying, all the stuff that she was saying. That's politics. Politics is deciding who gets what, when, where, and how. That's the reality of politics. Not going to the polls, not figuring out who's going to run for office. That's the last thing in the list. Everything that really has to do with politics comes before all of that even happens, before any candidates are selected, before all of that. So that's the politics that we used to be very adept at. I know Asar is very familiar with his studies, some aspects of that. Very adept at those types of politics. You see what I'm saying? Before there was any such thing as capitalism ever existed. And that's the kind of vibe. So when you talked about a new society, that's because really and truly, what we really need is political equality in the society. Everybody has to be the same politically. We have to have the same power politically. And if that's true, everything else falls in line. For real. But what does that mean, though? What does that mean? So here in America, I'll submit it means this. The most important aspect of what I'm saying means we have to have an independent political party. We got to have that in the United States. There's a lot of people on the left, what they call so-called white leftists, and even so-called black leftists, who will argue against us organizing today, as a people. We just one big rainbow, and we're going to solve all of these problems. And on a certain level, I agree with that. But what I'm also saying is we live in a racist society still. And so we're talking politics right now. This is what I'm talking about. We live in a racist society still. So we got to be able to organize to protect ourselves, to protect our children, to protect our communities. That ain't changed. So if they suggest to us that we can't organize, they're not our friends. I'm not talking about isolating ourselves at all. No, we should work with anybody and everybody. We should be ready to do that. Absolutely. Anytime. But we got to be organized. And to me, that's one of our biggest problems right now. That's our politics is fucked. I'm sorry, I have to say that. In the United States, it's horrible right now for us, politically. This is what I'm saying. We are so weak politically. That's why it's so hard for us to accomplish anything because of that. We need our own independent, and it has to start at the grassroots level. It can't be, you know, so a bunch of professors and this and that. We need them. We need everybody. I'm just saying it has to come up from the grassroots. I don't know how to get, I have no idea how this thing is going to happen, but I know that we got to have institutions. We got to have political equality first and foremost, not only in the context of the society, but in the context of the organizations that we make. And this, I'll end on this. Our organizations that we create oftentimes are nothing but replicas of this system that we're criticizing. And if you bring it up, they will ostracize you. I'm just saying, it's true. It's true. It's true. We build organizations that are not democratic. They don't want all the members to have a say in the organization, how the organization runs. It's a little clique at the top. Egalitarian, have the same political rights. People go off and just do stuff and come back and tell you, hey, we decided to do this. We're supposed to be an organization. You can't just go off and do stuff. That's why we're getting killed out here. Our political organization, not only in terms of the society, but the organizations that we build. I just left one. It was a perfect example of this. The political rights, the people in the organization didn't have the same political rights. They had certain people that could vote for the board of directors, and then other people couldn't vote for them. And you know, there's all kind of stuff going on. And I'm saying, why are you doing what? What about democracy? What about egalitarianism? Well, egalitarianism, democracy, who said that? I'm saying, oh, okay. Okay, I get it. Cool.
I guess in that case, it's that's kind of a different discussion on the nature of roles in an organization. Should there be roles and things of that nature? But we're going to go on to Sister Mo for I asked.
I'll bring it back around to that. I'll bring it back around in it. So in reference to the question about equal pay, I'm a firm believer, of merit, performance, and then a good reward system. I don't think everybody is going to get the same pay based on merit, performance, but I do think that people should be rewarded if the performance is there and it's equal, then yeah. But sometimes that's not going to be in the reward. An example of that is when I came off active duty and I started working for the state, and not the auditors, but the folk rehab. I thought they had the perfect scenario with pay, because if they wanted you to do something special, if it was an additional duty, you brought in some type of money, or it was a different project that would actually advance the agency, they would give you a temporary salary increase, and then which would be the type of reward system that they created. So you and that person can have the same job, but if that person got chosen to do something special, then their salary will go up, but then they will come down once the project was over. I think that is fair, having, based on merit, performance, or a great reward system. And then this way, because I don't think if the person is not holding, they just existing, come to work and go home. They're not really making no waves in the company, then no, you shouldn't get paid the same as the other person. You just existing, you know. But I do think it's to have a fair, based on merit performance, and have a good reward system. I support that. When it comes down to equality, you talk about money, to bring it back into the political side that the brother was speaking about. Right now, we're getting ready to face something with the census. If they change that census, that means most people won't be accounted, meaning money not coming in your community politically. In the political realm, a lot of people speak about the policies that are already in place that we're not tapping into, but what they're not are the bills that are being signed that we're not tapping into, but they're not talking about the bills that get signed for us is not funded. But the bills that get signed for them is fully funded. Case in point, they passed the bill, commemorate 400 years of African-American contribution into the United States. The bill was passed. The panel with the commission was put together. They were supposed to give $6 billion, $1 million, and push out $20,000 grants. Once they got the commission, once they did the study, they say, okay, you got to go raise your own money. If that was one of their groups, they would have got that $6 million. Those 20,000 grants would have went to their organizations and they would have made it happen. So when we talk about the political equality, those individuals sitting in those seats, looking out for the interests of their areas and forgetting about everybody else. However, they get on TV and they speak for everybody. So when you talk about political equality, I definitely follow you. And I go real hard when they say, oh, well, you didn't tap. Example, Roland Martin had a show today. He had Ice Cube on there. Ice Cube was talking about his plan, his business plan. You seen that? He's talking about an assistant. Well, the sister asked, she said, given the points in your plan, did you consider the bills that were already passed and head running by some of the senators? She mentioned Senator Kamala Harris, she mentioned Senator Booker, and a whole bunch of those, right? She said, did you consider that your points have already have bills out there that are already passed? I was in his chat saying, pick me, because let me educate this sister. The bills that were passed is not funded. So it's not going to help his plan. It's not going to help us. So when we talk about political equality, beat on the doors of those representatives and senators about funding bills that they are plastifying us and making it look like they doing something for our community, and they're not. The reason I know it because I had the privilege of following how disabled American veterans approach us getting our wages. They put the point plan together, 8, I think we get 6 critical points. They push it out all over the US. So we go out and we meet with our representatives and our senators, right? And then we have a conference we have in DC where all of the organizations, all of the chapters in the US go to DC, and then each of the states, each of the groups meet with their state representatives and senators, and then our overall guy, which we call our national commander, has a sit down with the committee for disabled veterans. I was so disappointed. Now we have a great approach. I just seen the other day they passed some of our bills, but that experience when we get there, those senators who are tasked to be in that hearing, they do not show up. We get about 6 or 8. I was so disappointed that we came here. We put you there to support us, and you can't spend 15 minutes. So when you talk about political equality, woo, you just, man, I thought I was on that bus for that. You just right. You definitely rung a bell, and it resonated with me on how this really works. And they're there, but they're not really. They put up a front. They come out and tell you what they're gonna do, and then they go back and they sit. I passed next to my Senator Scott, Senator Lindsey Graham, and I was like, we going into the hearing. I'm like, where they going? Ain't they supposed to be going in the hearing with us to hear? And then to see Senator Scott sit there and say, well, we gave you the opportunity zone. How many people have really explored the opportunity zone? Got a privilege of calling one of these guys and say, hey, we got the phone number. I was like, okay, we're going to get a grant. No. The opportunity zone is for the build the infrastructure development in your community. But guess what? You got to go out and find investors for your project. They have to go out and why? Why do our community have to go and work hard to find investors when you giving them grants? I'm on mute.
Indeed. I'm gonna ask one more question, but before I do that, I just want to remind our viewers and listeners to like this program and to share this program, and as always, to keep the conversation, going when you share it. Ask these same questions and ask some new questions that we didn't have time, to ask. So this is again is the first, episode of the Devil's Advocate, and so hopefully y'all get a feel for, what we intend to do, in the near future. And so, but this isn't going to be the only, news show or segment. And so, besides my interview with scholars, we'll have one dealing with business and how to make some business moves. For those of you who have, an entrepreneur spirit, or whatnot, so we can, make some changes that way in this society. And then, for those of you who know, that I belong to an organization called Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And so I will have a new show. The first episode is going to be next Wednesday, and it's going to be called House Insecure. So it's just going to be a bunch of members who happen to belong to this fraternity, discussing a wide range of different topics. But even though we'll primarily be the bros, as we call them, we'll have other people who are not, members of the fraternity to join some of these conversations. So I'll let y'all know, more about that, in the coming days. And so it's called House Insecure. So with that said, and remember to like and share the program. Oh, and the next topic for the Devil's Advocate is going to be, well, she wasn't in the gym, asking the question, should a spouse get half of a, of a divorce settlement, especially in these high-powered, situations, in terms of people who have worked hard and, Jeff Bezos and got his billions, and then somebody comes and marries, and, so that's going to be the next topic for the Devil's Advocate. And so I'll let y'all know, when that happens. And so, yes, I'm purposely starting mess. So y'all should know me by now that this is normalized. So with that said, the last question is going to be, if you believe that that capitalism itself is wrong and is the problem and is the source of all of this inequality and stuff that we've been talking about, and creating these billionaires who ain't putting money back into the community per se. If you do believe in that, if you do believe that statement or something close to it along those lines, if not capitalism, then what? So I'll start off. How did we go the last time? So I'll start off quickly with Master C, then we'll go Mo, and then we'll end it with Dr. McEwen. And you're on mute, so.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that. Okay, so let me do 500 years in two minutes. No. Okay, to start out, is capitalism immoral? In my view, yes, it is. So then what do you do about it? That's a good question. That's a good question, actually. There were quite a few people who tried to answer that question. As a matter of fact, we can go back to the first time our ancestors encountered capitalists in the first place. They were confronted with that question right there on the spot. I think if you had asked one of our people in West Africa who just got handcuffed and thrown into the hull of a ship what his view of capitalism was, if he knew what you were talking about, I'm sure that person would probably not like it too much, to say the least. And of course, we know that over the years, it certainly has not strayed from that logic, that internal logic, one bit. And of course, we see that today. In fact, the COVID-19 situation is just showing us very clearly, I think, some very important things about this capitalist society we live in. So, but to get to your question, because I know we don't have much time to say, what do we do? That's a very good question. And it really, I can share some things. I'm really not very well informed about socialism. I haven't really studied that, okay? It does have a history, as everything does, but I just haven't had the time to actually delve into it. You know, I just know some general things. And just generally speaking, it seems to be a European response to a European problem initially. This would have been in about the middle of the 19th century. So, but obviously, we have been dealing with capitalists by the middle of the 19th century. We have been dealing with capitalists for 200 years, up close and personal, not in a classroom or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? So, so rather than turn to a European who finally got around to crafting a solution, I guess, to capitalism. Our people have been dealing with that issue for about 200 years at that point. So I would kind of tend to look to them. And they were very much opposed to it, pretty much on all fronts. You know, here in North America, in the Caribbean, in Central South America. In fact, Dr. Gerald Horne, y'all familiar with Dr. Gerald Horne? Dr. Gerald Horne, if you should get familiar with him. Dr. Gerald Horne. He, H-R-N-E. He has written a couple of beautiful books about that. One, The Counter-Revolution of 1776, where he talks about this whole struggle. And I'm bringing this up to say that one of the things that stood out for him was how vigorous our resistance has been, okay, from the very beginning, all the way up to the present, to this capitalist oppression. It's been very, very vigorous. And there's not enough discussion about that, not enough talk about that. So I would say that I think what is in order at this point is to look at we here in North America and in America in a particularly interesting situation because the capitalists that we're dealing with here are different from the rest of them. I'm telling you, they are. They're different. They feel like they are the. They always talk about it openly. You know, we're the leaders of the free world. That's what they mean. That's what that means. That means that we're leading the capitalist world. And the capitalist world is headed up by elite European men. It's headed up by elite European men. So really it gets down to us. How do we, and one other little thing, and then I'll let it go. On this whole point is the current state of world affairs and what's going to be happening over the next 1 or 2 generations moving forward. This is very important stuff, which our leadership is not addressing in the slightest, not at all. We're not looking forward. Our response and our tactics and strategies that we are using today are the same ones we used 35 and 40 years ago. And the situation around the globe has changed dramatically. And now we have a situation where these European capitalists are scrambling, trying to protect their position and their power. They're scrambling. And it ain't working out too good for them either. And right here, things are looking bad. Things are not looking good inside the U.S. You see what's going on? Look around, look around. So why are not our leadership, where are they? So my thing is, and to answer your question, Asar, this is all a part of it, I feel, to directly answer your question. We have to, I think, now operate on a very basic and fundamental level. I really think so, in the United States. I think we need to take upon our shoulders our own survival and prosperity. So you go in all our communities and we ain't got no hospitals and we ain't got no food stores and we ain't got no training centers and we ain't got. And so our typical tactics and strategies have been all kinds of things, which we won't have time to talk about now. But we've tried all kinds of stuff. This has been going on for how long? So I'm saying, why don't we do something a little different? Why don't we, at the end of the 19th century, right after the Civil War, we was in a similar situation because there wasn't no welfare, wasn't nothing going on at that time. You see what I'm saying? That didn't exist then. There wasn't no government, nothing to support nobody. And so it's getting like that.
Basically what you're saying is that we have to come up with our own economic system and
I'm saying, let me. I'll close it off. We need to get our politics together amongst ourselves, at least on a very basic and fundamental level, to where we can have those things that we need. Don't got to do with religion and gender and all the rest of the stuff, because we all need these things. We need food and clothes and healthcare and all of this. So I'm saying we have to take on our shoulders to do those things. We have to build them. It's kind of like what Garvey talked about in the early 20s. I think we're at that. And if we don't, America's not going to provide that. They're not going to do it. And so if we don't do it, we're not going to have it. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, so we got to pull these things together and appealing to these billionaires. Because when you go to the government, in essence, we're appealing to billionaires.
But that's why we're waiting on Master C to come up with that hot reggae song. It charges the world $1 for it, so that you become the billionaire, to lead the charge, in that direction. And so I'm going to move on now. I'm going to go to Sister Mo.
If not capitalism, then what? It's almost like you almost get the socialism and the capitalism in one. It's almost like the pandemic showed us that, those billionaires, like, they get to hoarder their money and then says, okay, if you want me to help society, then you're going to give me some more money so that I can help them. And so it's almost like I'm going to be a socialist, but you're not touching what I already have. And so we just continue just to print more money. And then even when we have our own, I do agree, if we have our own organizations, it seems like we just mimic what we just came from. And then guess what? We create capitalism right back within our new system. So to undo what our mental capacity has learned in America is very difficult. It's going to be very hard. I believe what Dr. McEwen said. I believe it, but I'm like, then I have to go back and think about what the brother said, that we pick up we bring their processes with us. We bring their know-hows because that's what we've been taught through the educational systems. That's what we see. So we figure it's better. So we bring it and we say, well, we bring it with us and we think it's better because we see them rich or wealthy. So we're like, okay, we want to be set apart, but we want to do it the way they do because that seems beneficial. I don't know if what is even possible in America because of how the way it's, because think about it, when you see how different organizations come up off the ground, you hear the same reasons over and over of why we're not succeeding or growing in our organizations. And a lot of those reasons are similar in nature to why we want to break away from what the rest of the world is doing in the first place. So I'm not really sure if there is an end what, Brother Asar. That's why I go back to the moral responsibility to take care of your environment and to take care where you're building at so that it can seem fair or, at least present itself worthy of being a part of.
Parting words. So you said, if not capitalism, then what? We talked about, even though we have this great idea of building this new society, how do we do it? Because we've inherited all of these bad habits of capitalism, and we got to play the game to stay in the game, and all these things, right? So, I look at the kind of like the system of, building self, relating to others, and then being able to contribute to community, right? Because if I'm buried down with debt and lack and things of that nature, maybe financially, and then maybe even, within myself as an individual, I may or may not be able to contribute, fully the way that I want to be able to contribute, and may not be able to withstand the wiles of capitalism, right? If I'm not, built up as an individual in my spirit. So that's definitely a start. If we're sitting with the idea that the system that we're looking at is not working for me, it's not working for others, then individually, what do I have influence over right now? What can I do? Can I just make sure that I'm not contributing to this system of capitalism until I get in, a position where I can make some more equitable decisions? Can I make sure that I can make some more morally sound decisions on my own? And when I get to those platforms and where I have areas of influence, do I have the moral integrity that it takes to make the right decisions instead of just maintaining the status quo? And then, what part can I really play? And do I really have the courage that it takes to really step forward and build that community? If I look at the work of Fannie Lou Hamer, I want to say in, the 60s, right in the Mississippi Delta. Not much education, fresh off the plantation, contributed in starting the, I want to say the Freedom Farms, right? Why? Because she was like, it's not right. It's not right that people are going without. Sending clothes, sending food without assistance, without help. And so just like you said, Master C, I believe these things are happening all across the nation, all across the globe, and probably some smaller areas or some smaller communities than we may realize. It's not this big global network or this big national network, but it is happening in pockets all around. It's just going to take us to continue to do what we know is right. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining the panel and giving us your brilliant insights to my wacky questions or whatnot. And so, again, thank you. And thank you all who are listening live and having this lively chat session that is going on, here on the right. And so, it's a thought-provoking question and subject matter. And, this is something that we can discuss, for a very long time. But I definitely want y'all to, and I'm speaking to the listening audience, to, further engage not only the subject, but, our panelists in their various areas of expertise. So with that said, tell us, where they can reach you at, currently in terms of, any social media websites. So I'll go with Dr. McEwen, Sister Lamb, and Brother Master C.
So you can definitely catch me I'm on Instagram at Dr. So Dr. Tamia MC. So Dr. Tamia MC. And on Facebook, you can catch me on my business page, which is Well Friends LLC.
So you can find me on Facebook, my name, Monica Lamb, and Instagram and Twitter. And then my website is lambps.bpweb.com. And then every Wednesday on the Dagger Squad YouTube channel, I do Urban Economic Empowerment Show.
Okay, and for me, you can find my music on SoundCloud. Just search for Master C, and you'll find me. It's only a couple of Master C's, so you'll find me. And on Facebook, also Master C2, the number 2 on Facebook. Master C and the number 2. And I'd like to hear from people by email. I'm trying to build up, my intent is to try to build up a little email list. I have also a podcast that myself and a couple of brothers are working on. So that's coming. But I also would like to build up a little email list. I'm interested in getting some of my writings out to people. And so I know you're doing that too. But I started messing around with these publishers, but I don't know if I want to mess around with them anymore. So I'm thinking about going direct. So my email address is masterc2009@gmail.com. Love to hear from you.
All righty. And I got their, social media information and everything prior to the show. So it is already in the description, just in case y'all didn't get it and write it down. And so under each name, you have all of their social media. So check out their web pages, check out their social media, get with all of them, especially Dr. McEwen for the meditation and health awareness, Sister Lamb with the government contracts and financing, and Master C, not only for the music, but for the research, dealing with capitalism And so these are all scholars here, good individuals, people who I know personally, and just very good people. So y'all get to know them and, like their pages, subscribe to their channels, and do the same here if you have not. And so I like to thank you all, for joining, and y'all stay put, in the green room. And again, this is the first of many, the Devil's Advocate, program. So I think this was pretty successful, and I can't wait to hear y'all feedback. So leave something in the comments, and I will respond as best as I can to everyone. So with that said, I will talk to everyone later. I will see y'all actually next Wednesday for the House Insecure show. So y'all have a blessed weekend. Stay safe and keep washing your hands. And I'll be working on being a billionaire, and I'll let y'all know what I do and what happens once I get there. So y'all be blessed. Talk to y'all later.